They looked at his uniform and saw a nobody. They looked at his skin and assumed he was uneducated. They thought he was there to wipe up their spills and open their doors. But what the arrogant lawyers at the Apex Legal Summit didn't know was that the old man standing by the fire exit possessed a mind sharper than all of theirs combined. They were quoting laws to impress each other. He was the man who wrote them. This is the story of how a retired federal judge taught a room full of billionaires a lesson they would never forget. If you love stories about justice being served and arrogance getting humbled, please hit that subscribe button and like this video. It helps us bring more powerful stories to you. Now, let's head into the conference. The grand ballroom of the Ritz-Carlton in Washington, D.C., smelled of old money, expensive cologne, and ambition. It was the opening night of the Apex Legal Summit, an annual gathering where the top 1% of attorneys, corporate sharks, and billionaire investors met to discuss the future of global policy. Standing near the heavy velvet curtains of the north entrance was Elijah. At 72 years old, Elijah stood with a posture that defied his age, spine purely vertical, chin held high, hands clasped behind his back. He was wearing the gray polyester uniform of Titan Security, a blazer that was slightly too tight in the shoulders and trousers that were an inch too short. To the 300 people in the room, Elijah was furniture. He was part of the architecture, less interesting than the crystal chandeliers and certainly less important than the shrimp cocktail. Hey, you. Old man. Elijah didn't blink. He turned his head slowly to the left. Standing there was Marcus Thorne. Marcus was 28, a junior partner at one of New York's most aggressive firms, and wearing a bespoke suit that cost more than Elijah's supposed annual salary. Sir? Elijah said, his voice a deep, resonant baritone that seemed to vibrate in the air. Marcus thrust an empty champagne flute toward Elijah's chest. Get rid of this. And find me a napkin. I spilled a drop on my cuff. Elijah looked at the glass, then at Marcus. There is a waitstaff for that, sir. My duties are strictly security. Marcus let out a sharp, incredulous laugh, turning to his colleagues, two equally young, equally arrogant associates. Did you hear that? The rent-a-cop has duties. Listen, pal, your duty is to do whatever the people wearing the badges that cost $5,000 tell you to do. Now take the glass. Elijah took the glass. Not out of fear, but out of a discipline honed over 50 years. He held it by the stem. I will hand this to a waiter, sir. You do that, Marcus sneered, turning his back. Unbelievable. They hire anyone off the street these days. Probably can't even spell the law, let alone guard it. Elijah walked calmly to a passing tray, deposited the glass, and returned to his post. His face remained a mask of stoic calm, but his eyes were observant, scanning the room, cataloging faces, reading body language. He wasn't just watching for threats, he was analyzing the room like a chessboard. An hour passed. The murmuring in the room grew louder as the alcohol flowed. Then, a hush fell over the crowd near the main double doors. The heavy oak doors swung open, and a silence of reverence swept through the ballroom. Arthur Sterling had arrived. Sterling was a billionaire tech mogul, a man who had revolutionized artificial intelligence and data privacy. He was the guest of honor, the man everyone in the room wanted to represent, sue, or invest with. He was flanked by his own private security detail, men with earpieces and stern faces. The lawyers swarmed like piranhas, forming a semicircle, jockeying for position to shake his hand. Marcus Thorne elbowed his way to the front, flashing his whitened teeth. Mr. Sterling. Marcus Thorne, from Crane and Poole. We handle your subsidiary's IP litigation. An honor to. Arthur Sterling didn't stop. He didn't even look at Marcus. His eyes were fixed on the far side of the room, near the velvet curtains. He pushed past the blockade of attorneys, walking with purpose. The crowd parted, confused, turning to see who the billionaire was targeting. Arthur walked straight up to the gray-uniformed security guard. Elijah? Arthur asked, his voice echoing in the sudden silence of the room. The old guard smiled, a genuine warmth breaking his stoic mask. Hello, Arthur. It's been a while. To the horror of the room, the billionaire bypassed the handshake and pulled the security guard into a firm embrace. A while? It's been 3 years. I didn't expect to see you working, security? Elijah chuckled. Retirement is boring, Arthur. I needed to get out of the house. The agency needed a body for the door. I thought it might be amusing to be a fly on the wall. Amusing is one word for it, Arthur laughed. Look, you can't stand here. I have the keynote table. Join me. I'm on the clock, Arthur. I'll buy the security company and fire you right now if that's what it takes to get you to sit with me, Arthur joked, though everyone knew he could actually do it. Please. I need intelligent conversation. I'm drowning in sharks. Elijah nodded. Very well. The room was paralyzed. Marcus Thorne's jaw was practically on the floor. He watched as the help he had just insulted was escorted by the most powerful man in the room to table 1, right in front of the stage. As they sat, whispers erupted like wildfire. Who is he? Must be an old family servant. Maybe he saved Sterling's life once. It's a PR stunt. Has to be. Marcus leaned into his colleague. Doesn't matter who he is. He's still a guard. Look at the cheap polyester. Sterling probably feels sorry for him. It's charity. Dinner was served, followed by the main event. The lights dimmed, and the stage was illuminated. The speaker for the night was Randall P. Gentry, a constitutional law expert known for his theatrics and his ambition to be appointed to the Supreme Court. Gentry took the podium, confident and booming. He began a complex lecture on the erosion of corporate privacy in the digital age. He used big words, cited obscure precedents, and paced the stage like a lion. The audience was captivated, nodding along to show they understood the complex legalese. 20 minutes into the speech, Gentry reached his crescendo. We must look to the precedent set in the landmark 1998 ruling of United States v. Oakhaven Industries, Gentry bellowed. In that decision, the Federal Circuit clearly established that a corporation's internal digital correspondence is strictly protected under the Fourth Amendment, regardless of probable cause involving third-party vendors. It is an absolute shield. He paused for applause. The room began to clap. Objection. The word was spoken softly, but it cut through the applause like a knife. It came from table 1. Arthur Sterling was smiling. Beside him, Elijah remained seated, but his hand was raised. Gentry squinted against the spotlight. I'm sorry? Did someone have a question? We are doing Q&A at the end. Elijah stood up. The gray uniform looked out of place against the white tablecloths and crystal glasses, but Elijah stood with the gravity of a mountain. It wasn't a question, Mr. Gentry, Elijah said, his voice projecting to the back of the room without a microphone. It was a correction. You are citing United States v. Oakhaven Industries incorrectly. A ripple of nervous laughter went through the crowd. Marcus Thorne hooted from the back. Sit down, guard. Leave the law to the lawyers. Gentry smirked, leaning over the podium. Sir, I appreciate your enthusiasm for the subject. But I have studied these cases for 20 years. I assure you, the precedent is absolute. The precedent is conditional, Elijah replied, his tone hardening. The ruling in Oakhaven specifically states that the protection is voided if the third-party vendor acts as a data repository for foreign entities. It is referred to as the sovereign loophole. Subsection C, paragraph 4 of the majority opinion. The room went deadly silent. Gentry looked flustered. I believe you are mistaken. There is no such exception in the majority opinion. There is, Elijah said calmly. It reads, while privacy is paramount, the veil of corporate protection cannot extend to data housed on servers subject to foreign subpoena, lest the Fourth Amendment become a harbor for international espionage. Gentry scoffed. You seem to have memorized a lot of legal thrillers, my friend. But I am quoting the interpretation of Chief Justice Vance, the author of that opinion. Are you telling me you know better than the judge who wrote it? Arthur Sterling stood up slowly. He took the microphone from the table stand. Actually, Randall, Arthur said, his voice amused. I think he might. Arthur turned to the room. Ladies and gentlemen, I think there has been a misunderstanding about my friend here. You see the uniform, and you make assumptions. But the man standing next to me is not just a security guard. Arthur placed a hand on Elijah's shoulder. This is the Honorable Elijah Vance. Retired Chief Judge of the United States Court of Appeals for the Federal Circuit. He served on the bench for 35 years. And yes, he is the man who wrote the opinion on United States v. Oakhaven. The silence that followed was absolute. It was a physical weight. Every eye in the room widened. Gentry turned pale white on stage. He looked at Elijah, really looked at him, and suddenly, the recognition hit. Without the judicial robes, without the high bench, he hadn't seen it. But the eyes, the fierce, intelligent eyes, were the same. Elijah adjusted his blazer. You missed the nuance of my ruling, Mr. Gentry. If you are going to quote me to justify corporate greed, I suggest you read the footnotes next time. Gentry stammered, Your Honor. I had no idea. I am mortified. Elijah waved a hand dismissively. It is a common mistake for those who practice law for profit rather than justice. Then, Elijah turned. He slowly rotated his body until he was facing the back table. He locked eyes with Marcus Thorne. Marcus looked like he was going to be sick. He shrank into his chair, wishing he could dissolve into the floor. The man he had ordered to clean his spill, the man he had mocked as illiterate, was a legal legend, a man whose textbooks Marcus had studied in law school. Elijah picked up his glass of water, took a sip, and spoke to the room, though his eyes never left Marcus. I took this job for a few days because I missed the real world, Elijah said. I spent 40 years in a courtroom where people only showed me their best faces because they were afraid of my gavel. I wanted to see how you treat people when you think there are no consequences. He paused, letting the words sink in. I have learned a great deal tonight about the character of the next generation of legal minds. Some of you possess great intellect, he looked at the stage, but lack attention to detail. Others, his gaze bored into Marcus, possess expensive suits but bankrupt souls. The law, Elijah continued, his voice rising, is not a weapon to wield against the weak. It is a shield to protect them. And if you think your status, your money, or your title makes you better than the man opening the door for you, then you have failed the most basic law of all, the law of humanity. Elijah placed his napkin on the table. Arthur, thank you for the company. But my shift ends in 10 minutes, and I have rounds to finish. Elijah, please, stay, Arthur pleaded. No, Elijah smiled. I prefer the company of the staff out in the hall. They have better manners. Elijah Vance, the retired federal judge, turned and walked out of the ballroom. The sound of his security guard shoes on the parquet floor was the only sound in the room. As he passed Marcus Thorne's table, Marcus couldn't even look up. He stared at his hands. Elijah stopped briefly. He didn't yell. He didn't scold. He simply leaned down and whispered. There is a smudge on your reputation, son. You might want to clean that up. Elijah walked out the double doors. The room remained silent for a long time. The shrimp cocktails went uneaten. The champagne went flat. The arrogant elite of the legal world had been judged, not by a jury of their peers, but by the man they deemed invisible. And the verdict was guilty. Elijah Vance proved that true power doesn't scream, it whispers. He showed us that titles and uniforms are just costumes we wear, but character is what lies underneath. Marcus learned the hard way that you should treat the janitor with the same respect as the CEO, because you never know who you are actually talking to. If this story inspired you, please share it with someone who needs to hear it. Remember, respect is not something you demand, it's something you earn. Don't forget to subscribe for more stories that reveal the truth about human nature. Click the video on your screen now for another incredible true story. Thanks for watching.